like Gambians, because I was here in Gambia during the 80s. It was my first diplomatic post. And if I compare this time to now, I really realize what Gambia has done in terms of progress. If you take, for example, the case of Gamtel, in the telecommunication area, by this time, Senegal was helping Gambia in terms of facilitating or having a network in telephone system. But now I see that there are many companies like Afritel and Qtel, etc. There is a lot of progress in this area. If you take the area of transportation also, roads were very bad. If you go from Banjul to Serekunda, I remember this time the Senegalese High Commission was in Banjul, and it was taking a lot of problem and difficulties to go from Banjul to Serekunda, where we were living. So in terms of infrastructure also, I noticed that there is a lot of progress. If you take also the term of, there is another area I think I talk about also, transport, Gamtel, and also electricity. There was one company here, I forget the name, which was supplying electricity. You remember by this time, every night you have to buy candles to have some light. And I see now everywhere you walk in Gambia, from Banjul to Bara, electricity is there at night. So I really want to congratulate Gambia in this progress. I appreciate also the communication that have been done by all this respect from the different foreign ministry, from roads, infrastructure, transport, and other ministries. And I am very impressed on what I have seen. But I have to ask you one question. It is about custom. Many of the time, people are complaining, not only between Gambia and Senegal, but in the ECOWAS area, about taxes. Because the president is saying this morning, there is only 18% of intra-Africa cooperation or commerce or trade. I think in this area we have to look at the way we are applying our tax on our citizens. And this yesterday, for example, I come to the airport, I have my diplomatic passport, I don't pay taxes, but I see that all members of the delegation, they ask them to pay 12,000 CFA for entering Gambia. I think this also is something that we have to look at it and to see how we have to improve and to promote exchange between not only traders, but people who are living in the ECOWAS area. So this is some kind of contribution that I wanted to do. And really I congratulate you again, all Gambians, for the progress they have done from the 80s up to now. Thank you very much.
Ambassador Mohamed Musa Njai, the Gambian ambassador to Nigeria. I would like to stand on existing protocols. And my intervention is more of contributing to what my brothers have mentioned about why should we invest in Gambia. The first thing I want to say is that small is beautiful. Small is beautiful. Our size is our advantage. Because if a country is small, it's easier to do your business. It's easier for you to move from A to B. It's much easier for the cost of doing business to happen. And there's one advantage or one opportunity that I just want to mention here, and this is because of the number of years I've been in Nigeria. And I've come to realize that Gambia can be a financial hub within Africa. A financial hub within Africa. Why? We already have the infrastructure. How many Nigerians do we have here? A lot. And for a country to be a financial hub, there are indications that we look at, which I think Gambia has. First is the size, Switzerland. The size is manageable. Second, peace and security. Gambia is one of the most peaceful countries in Africa. That's an advantage. And The proximity to major markets, somebody mentioned it here. It takes about 6 hours to go to Europe and about 5 hours direct to Southern America. And then, of course, the language, the time zone, and the human resources that we have makes it very ideal for Gambia to be a financial hub. And of course, our educational base. Already we have very qualified lawyers to be able to help us with the financial hub that I'm talking about. And of course, we have the services sector that can complement the financial hub. And with all these things that we have, all I think we need to do as a country is to look at the financial policies, the laws, to make sure that we achieve this goal. And of course, in the process also, there are few things we need to add, which is an investment opportunity for everybody. We need to have an investment bank. We need to have a mortgage bank. We need to have agricultural development bank. We need to look at our policies to make sure that there are international mobility of financing and resources easier. So with that, I think we have an opportunity to get Gambia to become a financial hub. And of course, that will complement our tourism sector. The next point I just want to raise is that from the investors that would normally come to the embassy, they also need clarity on some few points that I just want to share with my colleagues here. They want clarity on the differences between the public-private partnership arrangements with the joint ventures. Because sometimes I saw on the board here, the CEO of GAGO was presenting. Some of those projects are government projects. We need clarity on those projects, whether you're going down the route of the PPP or going down the route of the joint ventures. Why? Because if it's PPP, then no matter what the investor does, you must do a tender process. If that's right, it's fine. If not, the investors need to get that clarity when they come to embassies, because sometimes they will come to Banjul and for them to be only told that, yes, we will be able to work with you, but you must do your feasibility studies, and then we will open the tender for everybody to tender. That is something that I think the experts will look at so that we are on the same page. And finally, I just want to congratulate the team for a very wonderful presentation, and I look forward to more interaction as we go forward. Thank you.
J'ai suivi avec grande attention les différents intervenants sur les opportunités d'investissement ici en Gambie. Ah, d'accord. Alors, mon nom c'est Nassir Mbakouari Fari. Je suis l'envoyé spécial du secrétaire général de l'OCI pour l'Afrique, ancien ministre des Affaires étrangères de la République du Bénin. Voilà, merci. Donc je disais tout à l'heure que j'avais suivi avec intérêt vos différentes présentations. Et je voudrais savoir, compte tenu de la situation géographique particulière et presque exceptionnelle de la Gambie en tant qu'État à l'intérieur de notre État. J'aimerais savoir, puisqu'il y a eu par le passé différentes expériences comme la Confédération de la Sénégambie, par exemple dans la Gambie et le Sénégal, qui a fait long feu, comme disent les Français. J'aimerais savoir, dans les différentes opportunités que vous avez évoquées, est-ce qu'il existe des sociétés type joint venture entre Gambiens et Sénégalais pour capitaliser ce, comment l'appelle-t-on, les deux marchés, puisque le marché gambien est extensible est très facilement extensible sur le marché sénégalais. Est-ce qu'il existe des entreprises du genre? Cela peut être un élément, un indicateur, disons, d'attrait pour des investissements, par exemple. Sachant que ce n'est pas seulement le marché gambien, au-delà de tout ce que nous disons, le marché de la CEDEAO, tout le monde évoque ça, dans n'importe quel pays. Mais il y a un facteur de proximité ici, facilement exploitable. J'aimerais savoir comment vous avez, est-ce qu'il existe des mesures particulières, fiscales ou autres, etc., qui permettent, si vous voulez, d'intégrer plus facilement ces deux marchés ici, en Gambie. J'aimerais aussi savoir, c'est un débat que nous avons eu à des occasions, et étant donné qu'il y a une personnalité du ministère des Transports ici, le pont sur le fleuve Gambie, qui relie le Sénégal et la Gambie. Comment le financement a-t-il été monté? Est-ce que c'est un financement exclusivement gambien ou un financement binational? Comment cela a-t-il été? Ça peut être aussi un modèle qui peut inspirer d'une manière ou d'une autre certains types d'exploitation d'opportunités d'investissement ici. Je vous remercie.
Okay, on the financing of the bridge, I can speak to that with authority because I was there and we were the ones who initiated it. I remember in the meeting at Arusha in Tanzania, we had a meeting, bilateral meeting with the then president of African Development Bank. And we raised this issue of the need to finance the bridge. I remember also he immediately tasked his advisor to work with myself and come with some form of a strategy to submit to the bank for funding. When we came back, we did the preliminary request to the African Development Bank. At the time, it also coincided with EU having interest to finance this particular bridge again. So we made the request to the African Development Bank, and they put it on an accelerated pace. Within 6 months, the bridge was approved, the facility was approved. And it was also granted. We had some discussions on the bilateral arrangements also at the time. And one of the things that came was what happens with ownership of the bridge. And we categorically spelled out that ownership is not negotiable because the bridge is entirely in the territory of the Gambia. So what we do, if you look at even the language that is in the agreement, we had agreed to provide unfettered access to Senegal, but to ownership and all the other conditions attached to that is mainly Gambian. And I think if you look at when we were opening the bridge itself, when it was being launched, I think President Macky Sall, in his statement, reiterated that the bridge is entirely Gambian, entirely owned by the Gambia. Okay, I think some of the other those who intervene also talk about administrative costs at the airport. Generally, cost of doing business, we are very much concerned because taxes, administrative fees, and even, tax officers probably visiting businesses multiple times in the year are kind of hindrance to business generally. So we will also be working very tirelessly to make sure we look at these costs. The intention of the Ministry of Trade is also to bring cost of doing business very much low, as much as possible. I think my colleague also, the last speaker, has raised whether we have some companies that are operating in both countries. I give you a few examples. Some of them are, for instance, EcoBank, Basic Bank, and we have a Gambian company, Jar Oil, that is also operating in both countries. The reason why EcoBank I will choose EcoBank as an example. If they have multiple presence in most of our countries, and one big advantage that they can leverage is the cost of transferring funds from one country to another. They can easily move funds at a very, very low cost. Compared to if you are to do a transfer, you have to go through the SWIFT, you pay, and all those things. So that's a very good example of these cross-border transactions that could be done. Thank you.
L'intérêt que vous portez à ces discussions, je voudrais vous avez montré les atouts de votre pays. Je pense que ces atouts sont aussi valables. L'Afrique de l'Ouest est même pour l'Afrique. Donc, je vous remercie pour votre apport. Malheureusement, comme je l'ai dit, les bonnes choses ont une fin. Merci. À la prochaine.
Distinguished delegates, ambassadors, ministers, former vice presidents, current vice presidents, the cabinet secretary, head of the civil service, distinguished permanent secretaries, ambassadors and representatives here present. On behalf of the organizers, FOGECA, Mr. Amadou Jain, and his collaborators, Mr. Hussein Usemo and Team Jaipa, and the government of the Gambia, we thank you very much for exposing our beautiful country to the world. I have the singular honor and pleasure to preside over this session, which is only for 30 minutes, so we will have to make it short and sweet. The topic is the economic and financial opportunities of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the Islamic Development Bank for the business world in Africa. We are honored and privileged that we have a very distinguished panel with us. I have some introductory remarks to make, but in the interest of time, I would like to use the adage of Mr. Yusuf, that it's always better to keep your comments, listen to everybody else, and then you can be able to punctuate and situate what you want to say in a very distinct and direct manner. Therefore, the first speaker, the first intervention will come from Mr. Abdullah Jallo. I don't happen to see him on the panel, but I believe Mr. Morsek is adequately placed to represent him. I think all of you will know that this very iconic hall that we are in here was built in preparation for the OIC summit. And it was held last year. And I think if you look around, you will certainly agree with me that this edifice certainly equals to any edifice you will see around the world. Do you agree? Ambassador Ba agrees, so Ambassador Njai also agrees. Now you will also know that this edifice is similar to King Fahad. King Fahad in Senegal was also built in preparation for the OIC. Therefore, when we talk about the OIC, there are certain similarities. And I have been around long enough to know the genesis of how it all started. I was fortunate to be at the Africa Investment Forum in Rabat, Morocco. And with, I think FOGECA was there, and my niece was also there, Muna Jallo. And we had the opportunity to meet with the acting president of the African Development Bank. And when he received us together with our delegation from the Gambia, he was very, very excited. He said, "You are from the Gambia?" And we said, "Yes." He said, "How is Professor Omar Jah?" He said, "Alhamdulillah, he is still going strong." He said, "That gentleman of Gambian origin is a sage. He is the most respected in the Islamic development Ummah because of his vast knowledge and expertise. And we all looked up to him when he worked for the Islamic Development Bank and up to today." We then said, "Well, thank you very much, sir." And I said also that your senior advisor is a good friend of mine, Abu Jallo. And he said something to me, and Muna can confirm this, and Maud can confirm this. He said, "Abu Jallo is a genius. He is my strategic advisor. He is my go-to person. So anything that you need in the Islamic Development Bank, you don't need to talk to me, you talk to Abu Jallo." Now, what am I saying? In the United States, when Martin Luther King was fighting for human rights, he said, "Judge us not by the color of our skins, but judge us by the content of our character." In the Gambia, I always say, judge us not by the size of our country, but judge us by the content of our minds. And that is very fundamental. Before I hand over, my brother FOGECA said Gambia is divided by a river. Likewise, Senegal is divided into two by the Gambia. You cannot go from North Senegal to South Senegal coming to Gambia. But that did not happen. It happened only in 1884, when at the Berlin Conference, we were partitioned. I went to the United States and I visited the African American Museum. And I went to the section where it says Senegambia. And what was interesting is that the most illustrious, for want of a better word, slaves were from Senegambia. If you go to the United States, you have a lady by the name of Finda Lawrence, who was a slave lady taken to the United States. And she emerged and became the largest African Senegambian landowner in the United States. Fast forward, there was an Amadou Jallo that was taken to jail. He was denied permission to read the Quran. So he wrote the Quran offhead and made it into an emblem on his chest, Amadou Jallo. You go to Boston, Massachusetts, and Phyllis Whitley is the most celebrated Senegambian slave who became a literary giant. You go to South Carolina, the rice that they grow in South Carolina originated from Senegambia, and it's called Carolina Gold. And I will share this with Ousseynou and the forum. And slaves from Senegambia were being sold at a premium for one reason and one reason alone. They were considered to be very good in rice cultivation. Very good in rice cultivation. Fast forward, 141 years later, Senegal and Gambia are importing rice. What a travesty of justice. We need to right the wrongs. And it is this forum that should not be a talking shop, but should be an action shop for us to really emerge, as it says here, emergence. That's extremely important. It was Colonel Gaddafi that said you cannot talk about independence. You cannot talk about freedom if your sustenance depends on outsiders. So I will end there, and I will now ask our panelists to make it short and sweet and give us their perspectives, starting with my brother, Mr. Monset.
Thank you very much, Brother Abdullah, for being the moderator. Distinguished guests, once again, thank you. I think the importance of OIC in developing most of our countries cannot be understated, sorry. The reason being, the OIC membership is made up of two distinct categories. You have those who are extremely rich in resources and of course, financial capabilities, and also those who are extremely poor in terms of needs. So that creates a very good opportunity for cooperation in all across the spectrum of economic interventions. It provides the resource rich to either invest or assist the poorer members. But it also creates an opportunity where, for instance, this OIC conference, like you have said, those who are hosting it can also use the opportunity to develop, their infrastructure. In the case of the Gambia, I think I'll just start with that. I remember down the line when we were discussing this OIC issue at some point in time, we had some reservations from the IMF at the time that some of the projects were ambitious and probably should be reconsidered. And I remember our argument then was, if you were traveling at that time using this road that you are seeing now, travel time to and back to your house, if you are living anywhere close to the Brussels area, to Banjul will take you almost 1 hour 30 minutes travel time. Now, cost that in terms of fuel, everything, the time you are wasting to travel back and forth, and a whole host of other things. And our argument was we needed to open this space so that you can also make travel more efficient, reduce the cost, reduce the time. Today, I think that argument has been vindicated. If all seen traffic has been open, and it's very fast. So normally, people spend between 30 to 45 minutes from wherever you live around this area to Banjul, to your office. Compare it with 1.5 hours going in the morning, 1.5 hours coming in the evening. So the quantum of savings that everybody is enjoying cannot be ruled out. But then the other complementary infrastructure included this magnificent edifice, among others. So it's an opportunity for any member country who is hosting to use it and then invest in your infrastructure, upgrade your infrastructure significantly. Our colleagues from Senegal have done the same thing. They've used the occasion and invested significantly in hotels, road network, etc., etc. But then it also provides opportunity for investments in some of these OIC member countries. I remember at a particular point in time, the Islamic Development Bank was one of the most significant partners in terms of development partners to the Gambia. They have provided substantial resources to the government of the Gambia in roads, in agriculture, in education, and across the spectrum. So that collaboration is so rich that if it is harnessed properly, you can develop some of these countries that are underprivileged. And I think for me, that's a big opportunity that we should not miss. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toure, moderator. We are always humble in your presence. We want to use this opportunity to thank the organizers, the Gambia Investment and Export Promotion Agency, the Office of the President, and FOGECA for this important forum to bring us to discuss issues relating to the emergence of our countries. The theme of this particular panel, the opportunities of the OIC, that the Organization of Islamic Conference, and the IDB, that's the Islamic Development Bank, is very important in the sense that if we look at the OIC with its 57 member countries, and earlier in the morning, the moderator estimated the population at about 1.7 something billion. Some would put the figure at 2.2 billion people. That is indeed very substantial and holds a lot of potential in terms of investment opportunities as well as intra-OIC trade, that is trade between OIC or among OIC countries. And if you look at this, the organization is also very diverse. You have membership in the African continent, in Asia, in some parts of Europe, etc., all being members with diversified natural resources, but also products that could be traded easily among the member countries. If we talk about investment and trade opportunities, we know that financial stability is what is very key, because all these transactions in the real sector are done through the financial system. So if the financial system is not stable, it impairs access to finance for the actors, but also makes it very difficult for the settlement and payment of the transactions that emerge from the real sector. To put this into context, we will recall the Asian financial crisis of around 1997, and also the global financial crisis of 2007-2008. And we know how this affected economic actors, whether these are companies or even individuals. To leverage the opportunities that exist as far as OIC is concerned, I think we really need to further strengthen financial stability in our countries, but most importantly, enhance integration among our financial systems, so that these cross-border payments that will arise out of the trade and investment that will exist between member states could be settled bilaterally rather than having to go to third parties. Because anytime third parties are involved in settlements, it does increase the cost of those settlements. In the Gambia, the banking system continues to be very stable. We have 12 banks, one of them being an Islamic bank, and the asset base is about 64.7, that's about 65% of GDP. So that is really very significant. And the capital adequacy ratio of about 25%, 24.9%. And the banks are very liquid. If we look at it recently, we've embarked on a lot of reforms to enhance access to finance. And recently, the Gambia capital market has been established. That provides a platform for investment opportunities in the country, both for Gambians, but also for investors outside the country. That means you can invest
into what? Into businesses that exist in the country once they enlist or once they are listed on the capital markets. Or once you also establish a business, that means you can use the capital market to mobilize significant amounts of what? Amounts of capital by broadening your shareholder base. A lot of reforms has undertaken, and we've seen that in as much as more needs to be done, a lot has been achieved. If we look at the payment system in the country, payments that used to take days to settle or hours to settle are now real time. Like now you can what? You can make real-time bank transfers. If you owe somebody, you can just make a real-time transfer to settle that transaction. And this is what? This is very significant in the sense that it could reduce the cost of what? The cost of doing business. And again, earlier, one of the panelists made a reference to issues in terms of challenge to access to finance. We know we could have finance in there, but if certain conditions are not met, it becomes very difficult to access that finance. And one of the things is collaterals. The Gambia, the Central Bank of the Gambia has established a collateral registry for movable properties. So it is even possible, if you are involved in agriculture, you can use movable properties to be able to, as collateral, to be able to access finance for the expansion of your business. And to make sure that the most vulnerable in society also have a foothold in the financial system, the bank has developed a financial inclusion strategy. Because it's very important, if we look at the structure of our economy, we have a lot of the businesses being in the micro and in the small categories. And some of them are informal, unless and until you are able to bring strategies or develop strategies that will help them have a foothold in the financial system. It becomes very difficult for them to have access to finance. So efforts at the central bank complements efforts in the real sector by the government of the Gambia to ensure that access to finance is facilitated for actors in the economy, including in important sectors such as agriculture, infrastructure, in retail trade, and in other sectors of the economy. We'll stop here for now, and thank you very much.
The Islamic Development Bank has done in the Gambia and continue to do. But we are extremely honored and delighted that we have the opportunity to welcome a good brother, Professor Nasiru Bako Arifari. He is a distinguished business academic and politician, currently serving as Special Envoy for Africa of the Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Conference. His appointment was unanimously endorsed by foreign ministers way back in 2002. Prior to his role, Professor Arifari held the position of Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Republic of Benin. He has extensive academic background, having lectured and conducted research in political sociology at various universities. His presence here is certainly highly welcome, and I'm sure you will learn from his vast experiences and tell us what is possible, and in his capacity as Special Envoy for the Gambia to benefit. By extension, since Gambia is the current chair of the OIC for the next 3 years, and we successfully hosted the OIC Summit, which was highly well attended. It will also be useful for Laji Aliunjai, Cabinet Secretary and Head of the Civil Service, to consider appointing a special envoy so that we can leverage the opportunity that is with us. You will recall that during the crisis between Iran and Iraq, it was Saad Jawara who was then appointed as the president of the mediation committee. And he did a phenomenal job. And it would not have been out of place based on what he was able to achieve to have been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his very, stellar work that he was able to manifest during those very trying times. So opportunity knocks once, and since we have this opportunity, I think we should seize the advantage and leverage on these possibilities. But I'm sure we hear from the distinguished professor. He will give us some lessons of experience that we can try to emulate. Mr. Professor, have the floor.